This video is dedicated to all the nasty little Hudson players that are out there ruining mine and others' games of Supervive constantly. Just kidding, it's whatever, guys. You know, you gotta do what you gotta do to win. But I'm still gonna go through this tier list and I'm gonna talk about the characters that are best at going ahead and beating Hudson. So, how does one actually beat Hudson? What are the concepts and things that let you do that? Hudson is really, really good at long fights where he's able to sit there and just spam from range, close down his angles with his barbed wires, close the angles that people can flank onto him and attack him, and just sit there and spam you, right? That's what he's really, really good at doing. So characters that can bypass that ability, bypass the barbed wires, jump on top of him directly, or are really good at exploiting his lack of mobility when he's firing his attack, having him trying to like hold down one location and just stand there, and people that can exploit that temporary like time frame of committed positioning, those characters are going to be strong. So, jumping right into it, we're going to talk about a character like Void. Void, in general, struggles pretty heavily against Hudson. He doesn't have the range to outbeat him. He doesn't have the mobility to really exploit Hudson. And that's really that simple. He doesn't have the mobility, doesn't have the range. So, he's pretty terrible. And because of that, Void's honestly going to go straight into D tier. He just doesn't have, like I said, the value of range or mobility. He can bypass the barbed wires with his teleport, but, it's going to make him super committed, and then the Hudson can just toss a barbed wire right on top of where he's teleporting to and then just burn him down immediately. When he doesn't have, when he has certain powers, though, that does kind of change that. Having an invisibility power is one of Hudson's biggest weaknesses, being able to pull up on him and just blow him up, but it's also the weakness of everything in the whole game, so I don't really know if that counts, right? Yeah, if you're playing Void and you get an invisibility cloak or the permanent disguise, right? Yeah, you're going to crap on a Hudson, but that's just not standard. So we're putting Void in D tier. All right, moving on to Shrike. So Shrike has pretty good range and can kind of, outrange Hudson, and has some stuns to be able to take advantage of his committed positioning, or at least, force him to use his dashes and move. But the problem is that she just doesn't like really outrange him, and she has to commit her own positioning a lot when she uses her attack, right? So she's going to charge up her attack and she's going to shoot at the Hudson, but during the whole duration that she's doing that, Hudson is dealing literally more damage to her. And like I said, because she slows herself down and commits herself, he's going to be able to sit there and burn her even better. So Shrike is also pretty absolutely horrible against Hudson. She's just really not the character to play into Hudson. Like, I would honestly rather have a Void in my team to deal with him, just because there's a chance that we get a Invis Cloak or something like that, or some other random miscellaneous nonsense can occur. But Shrike is just really bad at dealing with Hudson. If the Hudson's bad and the Shrike can, like, pull up on him and shoot him once and then pop him again, like, yeah, you can do it, but just in terms of like raw capability, Shrike does not do well against Hudson. Maybe she's like C tier. Maybe she's C tier if you space yourself properly, or like you walk up and you pop him once, then you dash onto him and shoot him and drop the nade on top of him. Like, yeah, maybe, but I think she's pretty bad. All right, so moving on into our next character here, we're gonna go and talk about Myth. And so what is Myth at? Myth is actually a pretty solid character into Hudson. She has a combination of solid mobility, so she can chase advantages when they're secured against the Hudson. But she also has the ability to walk through walls and approach Hudson from awkward angles and abuse vision on him. And she also has the ability to outrange him with her ultimate and to some extent her primary fires. But she's also really good at applying taking advantage of his committed positioning, right? Because she has her rain of arrow. And so what Hudson can do, or what she can do against Hudson, is when the Hudson has like a certain location he wants to play on, and he's like standing right here and he's just shooting down main, like, right? She can throw her rain of arrows like right behind him or right on top of him, just to be a nuisance, effectively. Throw it right behind him, and Hudson has to anti-heal himself and lose his vamp healing, which is really valuable for him, and also slow himself as he goes through. And it just splits him from his team, and it can be really awkward. And if any sort of CC lands on him, he's getting cleaved probably the whole time by that damage. And so there's, she just has a lot of range pressure she can do. So she's pretty good against Hudson, to be honest. And she can pound him with her ultimate from range while he's standing still trying to shoot. And she's not like the absolute best, but she's still pretty strong. So we're putting her in B tier. All right, moving on to Shiv. Shiv is not only super high mobility, like high ranged distance mobility, but also really like she has a lot of it, right? So she can jump on top of the Hudson with her teleport, and then she can dash around on him and blow him up, right? So she can continuously keep countering his movement. Essentially, a Hudson has no real counterplay when this doesn't have no counterplay because he's really really strong and he can use his barbed wires to like toss him on top of himself when the Shiv is dashed onto him and then dash off and then start burning him. Like there's things you can do like that, right? But there's not like when Shiv is actually on top of the Hudson, he's going to lose effectively because she applies her huge damage, her ultimate that anti-heals. She is not taking any damage from him and she's just popping him with shots, right? But she also has the ability to bypass his barbed wires in general because she can teleport across it. So she has a really, really good matchup into Hudson, and she's really, really strong. So if you're looking for something to beat Hudson, play this one. All right, Jhin. Jhin might not seem like he'd be incredible at beating Hudson, but he honestly is a lot better than I think a lot of people would think. He has a similar value to Shiv of the ability to bypass the barbed wire by throwing his dagger at people or using his teleport. The dagger is better for it, but the teleport works too. And so he has two options of which to bypass these for the engage, right? So you engage with the RMB, the range teleport dagger, and then you escape with your ultimate. You can bypass the barbed wire going in and out. So that's really strong, right? But he also has the ability to ground the enemy Hudson and apply like and CC him just enough that it's messing up his aim when she's lifting him in the air and maybe like canceling his dash because of how the CC is hitting him, even if he can't use it during the ground itself, right? And like I said, he has basically a guaranteed capability to get on top of the Hudson because if the Hudson wants to attack, the Hudson has to commit his positioning and is going to be very easy to hit with an RMB dagger, especially if you flank a little bit. So Jhin is really powerful, but he doesn't have as much of like a straight up hard CC to cancel the Hudson's damage. So if the Hudson plays it okay or like strafes the dagger and forces the Jhin to engage with like a regular auto attack, or like predicts that or a regular dash and predicts that, he can kite it pretty well. But I think Jhin is still really good against Hudson. All right, on to Brall. Brall is also really good against Hudson for a lot of the similar reasons that Jhin has. He doesn't have any capability to like physically bypass the barbed wires themselves, like by teleporting across it or something like that. But what he does have is the ability to just move an absolute metric crap ton, right? Because he has so much mobility. And so you can just strafe all the way around him really rapidly and bypass any sort of barbed wires that have been placed and just get on top of the Hudson immediately. He has a direct stun, which is really valuable against Hudson because it's stopping him from dashing away, but it's also stopping his damage temporarily, right? And so that's super, super valuable to get on top of him and just instantly blow him up, right? And set up your team for some sort of damage. But what he also has is he has anti-heal on his tether. So if if the Brall like dashes on top of the Hudson and starts pounding him and puts the anti-heal on him, then he's not getting any value from his vamp the whole time, right? And in addition to that, it also has the ability to completely negate his damage temporarily and block the pass through of his fully empowered like the RMB charged primary fire. He can block that and block its ability to cleave through him with his ultimate, right? So he gets on top of one of them, starts popping that, and you can block a lot of damage from Hudson, provide value for his team, just enough to get the kill, right? To change the difference between like getting the kill and starting to turn the fight versus taking a little bit too much damage and then not turning the fight, right? So, sorry guys. Right, so that's why Brawl is really valuable. And Brawl is also going to get put in A tier. All right, moving on to Bishop. Bishop does not have the capability to outrange Hudson, does not have the ability to really bypass the barbed wires super well. She does have 3 dashes in her ultimate that moves her. She will run out of that. She just doesn't have as like, they don't all recover at the same time like Myth or Brawl, right? So she struggles a little bit with that, and she's struggling with range. But what she does have is pretty hard CC, which is valuable. And she has, really just that CC, right? She has the ability to ult onto him and hit him pretty reliably, considering how predictable his movement is in addition to his forcing him his location, right? Like she can ult from a direction that's gonna like he's probably gonna kite directly into and steer her thing a little bit just to hit it. And then she lands that, and then there's a good chance you can punch him into a wall, deal some damage. It's not as valuable as like or as easy as any of the top three, right? It doesn't have the range that Myth does, but it's still solid, right? And it's a solid option. And if you have a little bit of follow up, then you can definitely kill Hudson with Bishop. But that's why she's getting B tier. She's not like super insane, but she does have some viability, right? All right, moving on to Joule. So Joule is a little bit tricky. She doesn't have insane range. She can kind of poke at a gunner, but she's going to take some damage doing it. She has, and all like the rest of her stuff is pretty shorter range, right? So she can't like use her knockback spear and get any value from that. And for her to get her value from her, the lightning strike pull, she has to get on top of him. But she does have a good ability to burst him, right? So she can walk up, stack him, take a little bit of damage, or like go from a slight off angle, shoot him once, drop the lightning spear on his head, shoot him twice, and then dash through him and then dash out, right? That'll get a lot of value. That might kill him if anybody else does some damage, but if not, it's not really that committed to go ahead and do that, right? And another thing that you can do is any character that has to commit their positioning pretty strongly, like a Shrike, Oath, Hudson, when they're like using their shooting or using their shield, she's really good at ulting and landing on top of them and applying stacks to the whole enemy team, right? And so she has some good value in terms of that with Hudson, right? But like again, same thing. She doesn't have the same mobility or like raw CC that some of these other characters do, but she does have she does have like counterplay and ways to go ahead and beat Hudson. So she's also falling into the B category. Nothing super insane. So like B is basically like viable but not free low. All right, Celeste. Celeste struggles against Hudson a lot. She's not particularly outranging him. She doesn't have any hard CC to deal with him. That's not, her ultimate. And her ultimate's going to make her be instant. Like, she's going to insta-die if she uses her ultimate. Use her ultimate in front of a Hudson, he's going to drop the barbed wire, like, slightly behind her and where she's trying to escape to. And then she's not going to be able to dash out, and she's going to get instantly just destroyed by everything in the whole lobby. So her ultimate's going to be pretty useless, and her wall will get destroyed by Hudson. You can maybe push into a Hudson, pop it, and like push him out of a little bit of an area, but then you have nothing to save yourself with. So you're just going to, try and ult. Like I said, you're going to die, try and stand around, you're going to get burned down and die. It's just like a lot of things that you will take fat L's to. So Celeste is pretty D tier also. Not good against Hudson. If you play into like a really coordinated environment, like maybe you can go for some like ult plays in towards a Hudson or, whatever. And anything is good if you just jump into him as a team, right? But as an individual character in your average ranked games, like not to play. All right, Ghost. Ghost is pretty good against Hudson. Nothing insane, but pretty good. He has the ability to outrange him with his lasers. He has the ability to hit some pretty solid CCs on Hudson that can mess him up, like the grenade, right? Knock him forward into your own team or knock him into a wall. That one's pretty valuable. You have to get maybe into his range to do that. You'll take a little bit of damage probably, but you can still get some value doing that. But his ultimate is also really good against Hudson. When Hudson's not paying attention in the middle of a fight, you can just drop the ult right on top of its head. And if the Hudson doesn't react quickly or, gets caught by literally anything, slowed by anything, or is stuck in like an awkward situation, in like any way, he's going to take a bunch of damage, right? And that can be enough for the Ghost to like push in and just finish him off or laser him to death. So Ghost is also definitely strong. Maybe low A tier, probably like one of the best range characters against Gunner. But I think Ghost is pretty darn solid. All right, so moving on to Felix. Felix has some of the value of these other characters like Brall, Jhin, Shiv. Not as much of the raw value. Definitely not as straight up valuable as a character like Shiv. But what he does do is a lot of like what I said, what they can do, right? He has the mobility, not the mobility to dodge the barbed wire, but the mobility to get around it. Can easily dive and get on top of a Hudson in a way that counters how he wants to play. Just because you apply the AoE damage at his feet and he has to get out of it. You body block him a little bit, it might keep him in there, might mess him up. And it's just going to be difficult for him to like hold a location that he wanted to hold against a Felix. He also has built an anti-heal, which is good general countering, but the Felix doesn't have the raw damage of a Shiv or the CC of either of these two characters. And he doesn't have, so he's not going to survive quite as well once he's already gotten in. But he does have some pretty darn solid viability with some of this stuff. So he's going to be put in like IB tier, maybe A tier. All right, Kingpin. Kingpin is really, really good against Hudson. Kingpin is a very spiky character that gets a lot of value from an enemy standing still. If you land either your hook or your stun, whatever you stun or hook should usually die, right? And Hudson makes himself very vulnerable to that. You hide just a little bit, you use your vision, he starts charging up his thing, you hook his ass, pull him in, blow him up, right? Easy clap. And you can also just flank and dive on into him and slam him. So as Kingpin doesn't have as much of the mobility as these other guys do, but so you can't like rely on that entirely, but you can just bypass his range, go around walls, and then hook him into your team and kill him. So I think Kingpin is pretty S tier. Like you probably should be able to take on Hudson by yourself as Kingpin, right? And you have the anti-heal, and you just have a lot of damage to apply to him, right? Very, very strong. All right, moving on. Oath. Oath, I play a lot of Oath. So Oath is, got a lot of experience dealing against Hudson, and Oath is not fun to play against Hudson. He will just cleave the crap out of your shield. You don't have the raw CC to be able to you don't have the CC combination with damage to be able to deal with him by yourself. Like if you jump into a Hudson and you try and stun him against a wall and ult him, unless you hit him with 3 chain CCs in a row, he's just gonna start beaming you down. You're gonna power shield and block a little bit, but he's just gonna beam through your shield and he's gonna beam through you, right? You're gonna get slowed down and CC'd, and it's gonna be a real struggle. Oath is not the worst in the game. He's not as bad as Void, Shrike, or Celeste, but the character himself does not get a lot of raw direct value against Oath. Not the worst in the world. You can you have some counterplay, like you can knock him off of edges to make it awkward for him, or get behind him to body block his escape. Like there is stuff you can do, but it's just not nearly as raw, objectively valuable as other characters. So Oath is in C tier. All right, Zeph. Zeph, his range character doesn't have the mobility, whatever, ignore that part. Zeph has some pretty useful capabilities to cleave him from range. The nade's pretty strong against a Hudson. The ultimate can apply some solid damage against Hudson, but it's difficult for him to get the stacks on top of the Hudson to get a lot of damage from the nade or the ultimate, and the nade doesn't guarantee a CC. So even if you do ground him and pull him in, he's still beaming you with damage the whole time. So Zeph is really not that amazing against a Hudson, just objectively. He can help. He can be a part of a team that can do a lot of value against Hudson. Like I said, any set of 4 characters toss themselves at the Hudson, they're gonna do okay, except for maybe these guys at the bottom. Maybe they will struggle. All 3 of them just eating themselves, right? But Zeph just really not the play either. Zeph is pretty into C tier also. And then last we have Elluna. Elluna is really, really valuable in terms of a lot of things in the game, but against Hudson, she's really just not it. She doesn't she applies healing, right? And her ultimate can res an ally or guarantee a wisp res basically. But the thing is, Hudson has the ability to completely deny wisps if he ults the wisp, or he ults an enemy as he's about to kill them. It sucks him in, it completely boxes them, and then GG, right? So he bypasses that entirely. So that part of her kit is useless, and her healing is not enough to out sustain him. And so the one thing you're looking at for how to deal with a Hudson is the root. But the thing about a root is it only roots, it doesn't stop him from shooting. So, oh great, you've stopped his positioning, and if you combo that with a ghost ult, sure, you'll blow him up. But with the hecticness of the game, that doesn't always really happen. So the realisticness is that you toss your little root at the enemy, and then the Elluna, you hit him, which you can do pretty reliably. But it doesn't really matter because he just tosses a barbed wire in front of his face. So any of your divers that try and go on are going to have, they're not going to get at the most amazing value. Where he's going to dash right as he's rooted, so he gets to travel still. And he's just going to shoot you, right? So it just doesn't do what you want it to. So Luna's pretty bad. C tier also. Yep. And then, you know, as a fun little extra one, we have Hudson himself. Where's Hudson himself? Hudson against himself is, what do I even know? I think Hudson against himself is S tier. I think you are your own counter if you play it properly. You look for an opportunity to throw a barbed wire behind the enemy Hudson, and then you and your team just pushes into him a little bit, and then you dash and you start spamming him, and you'll deal the same amount of damage to him, and you know, but he won't be able to escape, right? Or it'll set up, the barbed wires will set up him getting cleaved by like literally anything else in the game, and he'll just blow up and die. So, somehow Hudson fighting himself. Yep, there you go, guys. Hope it helps.